Hello everybody, Zach Couples, physical therapist here, and I have a confession to make. I'm guilty. Yes, folks, I'm guilty. Of what, you might ask? I'm not that glad you asked, because I hate to admit I have been guilty of using one of the worst cues ever when it comes to coaching breathing-based exercises. And that, pains me to say, is the ribs down cue. Yes, folks, I used to use this cue a lot in the past because of what I thought an effective exhalation looks like. Because, folks, breathing, kind of a big deal if you're trying to increase your available movement, whether it's in your upper body or a lower body, just because there's so many areas that are influenced by your ability to move air versus not move air into specific areas. And based on some knowledge gaps that I had in the past, I utilized the ribs down cue quite a bit. And I got some results, but it wasn't until I made this tweak to the way I'm coaching exhalation in particular that my results really went to the next level, and a lot of the common issues that I would see when coaching breathing, which could be neck tension, which could be a little bit of back cramping or soreness, or you feel a lot of back discomfort, you're getting cramping in the legs, yeesh, all that stuff seemed to just vanish out of thin air just by making this little tweak to how you're coaching breathing. So what I want to go into today's video, folks, to help you, wonderful, outstanding people, is I want to go into the biomechanics behind why ribs down might not be the best cue for when you're coaching exhalation and what we should see instead. The main reason why we don't want to coach ribs down when we're doing breathing-based exercises is because what happens or doesn't at the rib cage. So let's dive into what we should see and what we shouldn't see when it comes to doing breathing-based exercises to increase your available range of motion. Ideally, when you're taking breaths of air in, breaths of air out, you should see the rib cage increase range of motion in all directions. So you're going to see it expand forward and upward, that's the pump handle. You're going to see lateral expansion, the bucket handle. And you'll see the upper back expand backwards, which we call posterior thorax expansion. And this happens simultaneously during the inhalation. During the exhalation, everything should get smaller. And that's what should happen. If we have that, then we're going to increase the available ranges of motion. That should happen in this specific region, and that can help influence the range of motion that's available in the shoulder and among other areas. So then the question is, does that happen when you pull the rib cage down? I would argue that it doesn't, because notice this. If I take a breath of air in, watch what happens to the dimensions of the rib cage. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the rib cage apart, and you see how it gets bigger side to side, and then when I exhale it gets smaller, or not side to side but front to back. So that's kind of what should happen when you are taking a breath of air in and out. Conversely, if I just force the rib cage downward, or I think about crunching or anything like that, here's what happens. I can maintain the shape of this rib cage. Say I'm going to breathe in like this, but then I can bend through the spine and orient the rib cage as a unit like that. This is precisely what happens when you do the ribs down cue. You merely get a change in the orientation of the thorax as opposed to getting the segmental motion that we so desire. Don't believe me? Watch this. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead and take the biggest, most powerful inhale that you possibly can. Ready? Now from this position, I want you to pull the ribs down. You totally can, right? Well, here's what happened, folks. You maximally inhaled, so you expanded the rib cage as much as possible. And then what crack-a-lacked was you bent the rib cage down as a unit. So now you expanded the rib cage out and then just changed the orientation or the position of the rib cage, as opposed to what we should see during an exhalation, which is why a lot of times people will coach the ribs down. You should see the rib cage get smaller. Not this, but this. When you pull the ribs down forcefully without using an exhalation strategy to make it happen, what ends up occurring is instead of getting a restoration of relative motion or segmental motion, whatever you want to call it, within the rib cage, you end up just bending through a few segments, likely in the spine. Now, I can't say that those two segments, when you do this type of strategy, you're going to experience pain, but it is going to increase the loading in those segments that you've been through. And this is what I think a reason why a lot of folks might complain of back stretching or cramping or anything like that when they're doing some of these breathing exercises is likely because they're not getting a change in relative motion in the rib cage, but they're just changing the position that the rib cage is in. If you learned anything from that visual, it's we can't force ribcage position. We have to coach breathing in a certain manner in order to maximize the dynamics of the ribcage so you can get the movement improvements that you want. How do we do that? Well, I'm going to show you. We're going to head back to Elevate to see how we can coach the exhalation so we can maximize our movement capabilities. So if the ribs down cue is whack, how should I coach the breathing during the stack, Zach? Matter of fact, you want to do it this way and you'll be on track. Let's check it out. Thank you for your patience, folks. I had to go and take my shirt off to show you what I need to see when we're coaching the exhalation during various ground-based activities. So the reason why ribs down is an issue is because a lot of times people will inevitably force the rib cage down like that, like we discussed earlier, right there. And then what happens is you see the ab wall pooch forward. We don't want that because then we're not going to get a full exhalation. We don't get a full exhalation, we're not going to get the diaphragm to maximally ascend, which is going to limit our ability to maximize range of motion throughout the body. So we don't want to see this forceful when we're doing an exhale. And you don't want people to just say, okay, ribs down, got it. False. You don't got it. So what we want to do instead is we want to see a circumferential getting smaller of the ab wall and the rib cage, not in the same time, but in that particular order. So what you're going to do is, the way I coach the exhale for a lot of my Supreme clientele is I have them put their hands right below the belly button, so like right about here. And what you want to do is you want to coach that silent inhale through the nose. And then during the exhalation phase of breathing, you want to make sure that the lower abs get smaller first. You can think of this as like squeezing a toothpaste tube from the bottom up, so you get all that toothpaste out. But you're gonna get the lower abs to go smaller, and then it proceeds to the uppers, and then you should see the rib cage close down in all directions. So it's gonna look like this: silent in, long, slow exhale, however you want to coach it. You can see my abs get smaller. Then the rib cage, like that. I'm gonna hold position. Actually, I'll relax. I'll show you that again. Go ahead and look a little closer. You can see how my abs got lower. They didn't pooch out like that. And then the rib cage came down, back, and in towards the end. Here's a closer view of that. See how it was abs and then rib cage? Not this, but that. How will you know if you got it right? Well, I'm glad you asked. If someone has gotten it correct, aside from the visual representation that you'll see, they might report that they feel a little bit of muscle activity in the lower abs. It shouldn't be a substantial amount. This is a very low-key, ground-based activity. But when you do the exhale, you'll feel it working, and then you'll feel the ribcage come down. Now, if by some chance you're getting the abs to get smaller, but you're not seeing the rib cage budge a whole lot, you can try incorporating some type of reach to help assist the lower rib cage coming down. So if you'll see this type of person do this sort of thing, they might get the abs to get smaller, but you don't see the rib cage move. Sometimes adding a reach to this can help with that. And so if you're someone who has a little bit of a narrower rib cage, so you're a little bit more slender side to side, you can take one arm, reach it at about 90 degrees like so, or two. But I'm just going to show you one so you can see the rib cage. Silent in, Exhale, slow reach. And you can see I still get the best of both worlds. Now the rib cage came down very easy, saw the abs kicking in, rinse and repeat. Hold position, just like that. If you're someone who's got a wider rib cage, then what you can do instead of reaching here is you can reach at about 110 degrees of shoulder flexion like so. You get a similar effect. And that right there, folks, is the difference between coaching an exhale effectively, which I just showed you right now, versus that whack ribs down style of coaching breathing. And that, folks, concludes today's video about the difference between a full multi-directional exhalation versus the ribs down cue. I hope you found that useful. Are there any other breathing-based strategies that you've struggled with, that you need help with? What other problems do you have when you're coaching stacking base or exhalation focused activities? Do you want to see me with my shirt off more? Go ahead, comment below, hit the like and subscribe button so that way the fam can keep growing. Otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in. You've been an incredible, outstanding audience, and I hope that you keep reeling out to the sim where things go wrong. Stay hungry, stay learning, stay moving, and I'll see you next time. Deuces.